Hey everybody, it's Regan here. Energy Multiplier from the Smart Medicine is one of the most impactful formulas when it comes to improving your mitochondrial health, balancing the blood sugar. There's 3 primary ingredients in here that you're going to love. Berberine, which many of you have seen some of the research on berberine and longevity. It helps stabilize blood sugar, but it also brings energy into your mitochondria. It's got banaba. Banaba is another blood sugar stabilizer. And then one of my favorites is Genema. Genema is great because it helps with sugar cravings. So if you're someone who craves sugar, you want better energy, well, there's no better thing that I found than Energy Multiplier. So give it a try. Go to thesmartmedicine.com, and you're not going to regret having better energy. Stave off diabetes, stave off heart disease, and let me know how you do on it. All right, we got people coming in. Welcome, everybody. Well, let's kick this thing off today, should we? All right, so this is week number 4. Once again, we're on our 90-day challenge, and it's our longevity challenge. And one of the most important things that we can start thinking about right now is, how we want our life how we want to live our life, how healthy we want to be. And this 90-day challenge is meant to transform the way you think about your health. So this is more of a DNA summit. We're gonna show you ways you can extend your lifespan by 7 years. And so the very first challenge, the very first topic was on how to grow old without aging, and that was all on maximizing your body's stem cell health. We talked about what autophagy is and senescent cells, and so these are some of the concepts that are really important when it comes to overall longevity. We talked about getting your joints fixed, your brain fixed. All of those things are critical pieces of longevity. Week 2, we took a deep dive into mitochondria, and we talked about maximizing your energy. And mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, and so it's the mitochondrial health that we're going to even be talking about in more detail today. But that mitochondrial health will predict how long you live. And then week 3, we jumped into the blue zones, and that was really exciting. I don't know. Week 3 was fun because we went to 5 major zones, considered the blue zones, where there's more centarians or super centarians in these zones than any other place. And so we talked about some of the lifestyles there. So make sure you jump into your hack and you guys can learn that. And then today, what we're going to be jumping into is this concept called DNA silencing. And so when I say DNA silencing, Kendra, you probably think that I'm trying to censor everybody. But maybe, is that really what we're trying to do, is censor everybody?
I don't believe so. I think that this DNA silencing is a little bit different.
Yeah, this is kind of fun, right? Because how many of you have used a photocopier before? Has anyone that not used a photocopier? So photocopying is really important because, if you put the page on just right, then you can get, the same duplication, right? And so ideally you want to get, when you're photocopying papers, you want them to turn out the same way as the original. Well, what happens after you've photocopied things about 20 or 30 times, and you put the paper on and you're in a rush and the paper gets kind of crooked, right? You can still use the form, but it's not quite as nice. And then you use it again, and it's like the misalignment, kind of, you're getting dizzy when you're trying to write on the form. This is what used to happen to my medical records when we were before the electronic health records, because my forms would get all crooked because we'd use them you'd run out and you just run over to the copier and hurry and press start and get a bunch of copies, and it would be crooked and you wouldn't care, but then you'd lose the original. Well, the way that relates to our genes is we have this DNA, and as long as you can get the DNA to photocopy from one cell to the next cell, that's where you get these really healthy cells. And so there's a book called Lifespan, Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to, by David Sinclair. And so what we're going to show you today is why this photocopy becomes blurry and what to do about it. So this is where we're going to jump into these 9 hallmarks of aging. So let's talk about what these 9 hallmarks are. Now, first of all, how many of you have actually ever studied the 9 hallmarks of aging? Okay, so if no one has, this should be new and interesting. And the 9 hallmarks of aging that we're going to cover: stem cell exhaustion. We went through that in week 1 a little bit. Altered intracellular communication, genomic instability, telomere attrition. And I know, once again, this is kind of confusing, which is why I said we're going to replay it tomorrow so that you guys can come back to it and just really let it absorb. Epigenetic alterations, loss of proteostasis, deregulated nutrient sensing, mitochondrial dysfunction, and then cellular senescence. So otherwise, it's pretty simple, right? I mean, aging.
Sounds super simple.
Yeah, so I mean, not much to it. We just get old and we die. But actually, there's, aging. Once again, Aubrey de Grey, he says that the most deadly disease on the planet, literally, it kills about 150,000 people every single day. And there's a lot of research that's going on to help stop aging. And today, you're going to hear some of the latest and the most studied portions of aging. So let's talk about number 1 in this kind of the 9 hallmarks of aging. It's genomic instability. And so what that means is, you can see there, remember that DNA is like the photocopy, and the DNA is going in there and it needs to be repaired all the time. And you have this reparative mechanism. So it's really cool because our bodies, the way that they're designed is the cells heal themselves, the DNA heals itself, and you have these little structures in there that are almost like doctors in your DNA, and they go in there and they trim up the DNA, and these are called sirtuins. But what happens as we age is you get x-rays, or if there's replication errors, like there's too much inflammation in your body, what can happen, or the reactive oxygen species, is when the cell, the DNA, goes to replicate itself, that's when your body goes into the cycle of disease, because the replication isn't perfect. And so that results in mutations, it results in chromosomal gains and losses, telomere shortening, and gene disruption. So the genomic instability, this is why when you get older, suddenly we start developing diseases and we don't quite look the same, and we may not feel the same or act the same. And a lot of it is this genomic instability. The second thing that can happen, and this is pretty interesting, is telomere attrition. So there's a great test by Ryan Smith, his company called True Age. They put together this very complicated but detailed way of testing your biological age, because we all have 2 ages. We have a chronological age, and then we have a biological age. So, Carly, do you know somebody who looks a lot younger than they are? Like maybe one of our patients who you're like, holy smokes, you're 60? I figured you were 40. Like, do you know somebody like that?
Yeah, we do have several patients that I have to do a double take and remember that they are grandmothers when I'm like, oh, okay, you're in your early 50s, or at least you look in your early 50s, and they are grandmothers. They're in their 60s. So yeah, that happens quite a bit.
It's pretty cool, isn't it? Or you take somebody who you think they're in their 30s and they're actually, or you think they're in their 50s and they're actually in their 30s. Have you had the opposite effect?
Very much so. There are people that I'm like, oh, you're only 5 years older than me. Okay, so I've seen both. I've seen both for sure.
Yeah, there's, it was sad, but there's a homeless dude sleeping in the parking lot this morning, and I kind of woke him up. I said, good morning, how you doing? And you could tell he was young, but drugs had made him look a lot older than he was. So he was probably 30, but he looked like he was in his 50s. So there's certain substances that cause our telomeres to start to shorten, and this telomere attrition causes us to age faster. Or some people, they look really young, and when we test their telomeres, and their telomeres are actually pretty darn long. And so their biological age may be younger. And so one of the tests that those of you who are super interested in diving into this, you can do the Telomeres is one of the tests you can get. It costs about, I think, $80 or $90 to get your telomeres tested. But then the more advanced test that looks at about 180,000 different methylation groups on the DNA, that's true age. And true age will give you a much better and more realistic marker as far as what your biological age is. So, Kate, have you done any biological, like looked at your biological age versus chronological before?
I haven't, other than I did Biome. Biome doesn't do the age. No, in Teleyears, I tried doing one of those, but it took forever to get the kits, and I got to circle back with them.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. I mean, I did the Teleyears, and then I've done True Age, but yeah, it's one of those things that you want to keep pushing, and that's where it's interesting when Dan Sullivan came out. We did we worked on his telomeres, we worked on his stem cell health, we worked on a bunch of different things. And he went 6 months after coming out here and did another telomere test. And he actually for years, he'd been trying to be biologically younger than he was chronologically, because he's got his goal to live to be 156. And he went back and got it retested and was 10 years younger than his biological age. Or his chronological age, his biology was 10 years younger. So these therapies work. Some of these that we'll be talking about today. So telomere attrition it's kind of like when your shoelaces start to get loose. So we consider the telomeres like it ties your DNA strong so that they're laced up. But if you start to have your shoelaces degrade and fall apart, then that's when things start really getting aged fast. So telomere shortening, and the way it happens is through inflammation and oxidative stress. So if we live a sedentary lifestyle, if we eat candy, crap food, if you are basically putting your body under undue stress, that could be work, emotional stress, stress from infection, stress from chemicals, that's going to make your telomere shorten. Whereas if you're eating some of the healthy foods, like your olive oil, which we have here, fish, your healthy fruit, a little bit of fruit in the evening, and then some great vegetables, and you're exercising, that's what's going to keep your telomeres from lengthening. So that's number 2. Number 3 in this 9, I can't believe there's 9 hallmarks of aging, because there's so much depth to each one of these. But this is interesting because this is called an epigenetic alteration. So if you think of the word epi, it means above. And so above the genes. And so a lot of you may just say, man, I just got, I got dealt a real bum deck of cards. I was born and holy cow, my dad was a sickly man. My mom was a sickly woman, whatever, no matter what you think happened to you genetically. And a lot of us, our mindset gets locked in on, I've got bad genes. My dad had a heart attack and my mom had cancer, therefore I'm going to have that. We got to get away from that mindset. And this is where the study of epigenetics is so fascinating, because if you don't start looking at your epigenetics, then you may age faster than is necessary. And so some of the things that do change our epigenetic, aging in and of itself, but lifestyle can do it. Our diet does it. And then a big thing that we're looking at in the epigenetics is our gut microbiome actually influences our DNA. So this means when you change your gut biome and you have an abundance of certain bacteria, and that can actually cut back on your aging process. And so that's the cool thing about this epigenetic altercations, because these alterations, if you can catch them early enough, and this is why we do stool testing with every single patient that comes into a functional medicine program, because now we can start to see some of these predictive factors that are going to influence your genes. So those of you who maybe we've worked on SIBO, or we've worked on, we've worked on many of our members have had like C. diff when they've come to see us. They have colitis, they have IBS, and so getting the gut fixed is one of the root causes of these epigenetic issues. And so just by fixing your gut, you're going to get younger. So pretty darn cool. Literally every medicine you go back to, Hippocrates, he said, let thy food be thy medicine be thy food. Healing starts in the gut. Chinese medicine, healing starts in the gut. Ayurvedic medicine. And so now what we're seeing in these studies when it comes to aging is researchers are actually seeing that based on the bacteria in your gut, we're starting to be able to predict how old you are from a biological perspective. So it's pretty interesting. So how do you get good gut health? Carly, what's some things that you coach your patients on as far as getting good gut health?
One of the first things I talk about is stressors. I tell them they've got to work on those stressors, or at least calming those stressors down. But then we also talk about food choices. That's huge. And once we understand, after some testing, once we understand what it is we need to take out of their diet, we really focus on, do we need to get rid of the gluten and the dairy and obviously the sugar? Everybody loves that conversation when I tell them they can't have sugar anymore. But then also feeding the good gut bacteria with your prebiotics and your probiotics and making sure that they're keeping really good gut bacteria once we've cleaned and cleared out the bad bacteria.
Yeah, it's so important. And then especially when you start to see that there's patterns emerging in the gut bacteria, that's when we can get really selective. So get the scoop on your poop is what my one of my teachers used to say. So, and get a stool test. All right. So let's talk about loss of proteostasis. And so this is interesting because protein, when you have an impaired protein homeostasis, what's going to happen is you're going to get this problem with your proteins where they don't fold properly. And protein folding is one of the most necessary parts of having good cellular integrity. It's how all your cell structures exist. And then proteins are that's like the text that you send all day or emails. Proteins are what's sending the message to your cells. And that's, proteins are just peptide structures. And so one of the problems is the quality control gets aggravated with aging. And so these proteins start misfolding. And then that's when disease starts to show up, because imagine if you are talking to somebody on the phone and you go through a dead spot. And I think we've all done this. This is what happens with proteostasis, is the cell-to-cell communication gets dropped. And so when that happens, then you get this aggregation of all these communication pathways coming into the cell, and the cell can't receive those communication pathways. And that aggregation of all these proteins causes aging. And so not an ideal thing to have happen. So one of the things that you'll see when you get the aggregation is that's when there's damage to the components of the cell, the cellular membrane. And then this also creates that inflammation process in the body. So what causes this folding and aggregation of these proteins? Well, it can be oxidative stress. It can be heat shock. Cold shock can do it as well. All these things can start to diminish your body's ability to heal. And so this is where peptides are really exciting, because with peptides, we reprogram and reformat these protein messengers so that your cells can receive them in and then start manifesting health again. So pretty interesting there. Okay, so we're already at number 5. So far, we went through 4 pretty heavy things. How's everyone holding up? So far,
we're hanging in there.
Okay. There will be a quiz.
We got a few hands that have been up the whole time, though, so maybe they could.
Okay, well, feel free to plug in your question in the chat box. And all right, so let's go to 9 hallmarks of aging, number 5. And this is deregulated nutrient sensing. So this is an important one because nutrients, what happens is if we don't have nutrients, then our body, over time we get malnourished and our bodies really start to get damaged pretty severely. But one of the things that we've learned is a person can go longer without food than they can without sleep. And they've done studies. So this was a study done with I think it was 6 or 8 Swiss scientists. And in this study, what they did is they put them in a deprivation area. They basically said, okay, we're going to have you fast. You want to stay hydrated. But they had these gentlemen fast for 60 days. Now, that's a long time. I would be like, I'm not even interested in doing this study, but these guys were like really fascinated with learning about physiology. And I appreciate the fact that someone else has done it. Cade offered to do the 60-day. And so if you guys want, we can put him through the 60-day fast challenge. So just have him. Okay, so Cade, you're contractually bound now to 60 days, no food.
I don't know if you could pay me enough money to do that.
I bet you'd maybe make it like 60 minutes.
I can go 60 minutes without eating. I'm in.
Yeah, the thought.
No.
Yeah. It'd be a tough challenge. But here's what happened: is they measured the organ size of these men that they underwent this fasting protocol with, and the organs literally. Our bodies are so adaptive and so amazing that their organs actually shrunk. All their organs were about half the size. And their body just went into this massive hibernation stage. And so, their muscle mass started to wither. Obviously, they had a bunch of atrophy. But when they got out of it, they actually started eating again. And it just caused this massive influx of stem cells, and it flushed out a bunch of senescent cells. And these gentlemen actually ended up aging a lot slower than their cohorts who didn't do the 60-day fast. So I was thinking about the challenge for this week, and I thought a 60-day fast might be pretty helpful to have some people join Cade. So if you guys are interested in joining Cade on the 60-day fast, first of all, we have a disclaimer that we're not liable. But secondly, we want to get everyone signed up on that. Okay, that's not the challenge, not really, but
we lost a few viewers there on that one.
We're out 60 days, Regan. Well, that's a lot of time. I mean, that takes some willpower. But here's what happens when we don't have nutrient sensing. Well, first of all, you have this AMPK pathway, and that's the backup for your ATP, for your energy. And then what happens is your growth hormone starts to decline. And so as we age, what happens is our acids in our stomach, we all have hypochlorhydria, so we don't break down our nutrients as well. Many of our patient population, they have no gallbladder, so they're not emulsifying the fats. They're not getting those fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin K, vitamin E. I think I said already vitamin E, excuse me. But they're not getting those fat-soluble vitamins absorbed. And so then they end up having some pretty malnourished blood labs. And this is when growth hormone starts to get thwarted and IGF-1 calms down. And so then you start to get these muscle pains and you start to have a diminishing impact on your sex hormones. So nutrient sensing is a really important thing. And it's one of the parts of aging is when you have a deregulated nutrient sensing, because even though you're eating the nutrients, your body's not absorbing the nutrients. So does that make sense? And then it affects your growth hormone. So here's a different way of looking at it. Sometimes you have a nutrient excess that can cause different signaling pathways and trigger inflammation versus caloric restriction. So, what we found is that if you can turn on the gas pedal and do some fasting every now and again, that's a great way. And then you want to have times where you actually feast. So feasting, fasting, and that's where time-restricted eating seems to work best for people like Cade and me. I think all of us, we like to eat. And so time restricted eating's a really good way of maximizing your body's ability to keep longevity turned on, but not have that nutrient missignaling. Cool.
Yeah, time restricted eating is a lot more doable than the calorie restriction or fasting for 60 days. I'm curious, like, what did they do during those 60 days? Like, eventually you come to the point where, like, your energy's got to be so depleted.
Yeah. I mean, there's interesting studies. I mean, there's an obese gentleman out of Scotland, and he was like 300 pounds overweight. So I think he was 450 when he started, and he literally did water for a year and lost all his weight, did pretty well. So I'm not saying that's the best way to lose weight, but I'm saying it works. But if you're going 60 days or longer without food, you got to have minerals, and you got to be getting some vitamin IVs. There's got to be some things that happen to keep you alive. But these gentlemen, they certainly weren't doing a bunch of pull-ups and push-ups. I can tell you that much. You're not going to go run 5 miles every day and not have some massive breakdown in your body. But what happens when you come out of that fast, you're so much stronger. And I think everyone on here, we've all fasted before in one form or another, but it's a way of forging this new signaling in your body where you go into this starvation mode, and our bodies have learned to adapt to starvation, where we have different pathways that turn on that allow us to survive. And by turning on those pathways, if you do it temporarily, it can be a really good thing for your overall longevity. If you do it too much and too extreme, then you start downregulating your thyroid hormone, and that's when you start disrupting a lot of the healthy, kind of longevity hormones. So this is where looking at IGF-1 and growth hormone are really key to your overall longevity. Okay, so let's talk about mitochondrial dysfunction. Now, we talked a lot about MOD-SC, 5-amino-1-MQ. These are some ways that you can really maximize your mitochondria with those peptides. But what happens with the mitochondria is called mitophagy. So just like your cells, when they stop replicating in a healthy, positive way, your mitochondria does the same. And as the mitochondria does that mitochondria starts creating more reactive oxygenation species. And this oxidative stress causes deterioration to the very energy center of the cell, the mitochondria. And the mitochondria become dysfunctional, and then that increases the aging process, because now instead of having this healthy, robust cell, that cell does not have the fuel it needs to survive and produce ATP or to produce energy. And so that diminishes your respiratory activity in the cell, and then it also increases your ROS emissions. And so one of the things that we found with mitochondria, and you guys have already been through the mitochondrial challenge, is the short bursts of energy. Remember how we did the 30 seconds of full on 100%, whether you're on a bike or you're sprinting or you're on a rower, and then you do 4 minutes of just mild, and then 30 seconds all out. You do that 5 times, and you're going to have a multiplication in your mitochondria. So healthier your mitochondria are, the slower you're going to age. All right, number 7 is cellular senescence. Now, this is a term we did go through, but let's kind of see how senescence. So, Carly, you remember senescence, or Kendra, Cade? Any of you want to take a stab at what senescence actually means, or what cellular senescence is?
I can barely say the words. So I feel like Cade would be really good at describing this.
Cade's getting picked on today.
He is.
Yeah, sorry, I was a little bit late. So it's all right. Pick away. So senescent cells. All right. So those are like, are those the bad cells that you want to get rid of?
Yeah. So you're on the right track. So
they're cells that have either been oxidized or damaged or just not working and functioning optimally. And so what happens, you recycle those, is kind of what's happening or you want to recycle senescent cells.
Yeah, you want as few senescent cells as possible. It's called the Hayflick Limit. And so I'm trying not to get too crazy on the details, but the Hayflick Limit is when your cells can replicate about 60 different times. So it's like photocopying, We can get about 60 good copies, and then you're not going to be able to read the page anymore.
And it starts getting crooked, and then the ink starts to fade. Yeah.
Yep. And so in lineages of cells, you have the cell lineage, and then the senescent cell is kind of at the end of that lineage. And that's when the senescent cells start sending out really weird protein messengers to other cells, like, hey, why don't you forget where you put the keys? Or maybe you can, your collagen structures don't need to hold up anymore. So then why do you need joints? You're old. But these senescent cells are different than autophagy. Autophagy is when you're exercising or fasting, and then your body uses the cells as energy. So we're kind of like cannibalistic creatures. I shouldn't even have said that. Just scratch that. No one's a zombie, but yes, the zombie movies, actually our own biology is freakier than the movies that you guys can watch. Once you start looking at it, like, holy cow, so you eat your cells. But these senescent cells, they start accumulating, and this is where cancer shows up, or aging, and even in studies they found that, if senescent cells aren't cleared, that's what causes that inflammation, where you see ferritin levels high, you'll see C-reactive protein high, homocysteine elevation, fibrinogen elevated. These are all some dangerous things to happen. So even in mice, what they found with cellular senescence is when you see these higher values of some of these inflammatory markers, you'll find that there's greater levels of senescent cells, and that leads to heart, skeletal muscle breakdown, kidney tissue issues. So pretty interesting on cellular senescence. So you're right, Kate. It's just that the old cells that need to be recycled and removed.
Nice.
Send them through the machine. So, all right. Now, 8, stem cell exhaustion. Now, this is interesting. So here's a question we know Kate's going to say. What's a stem cell, Kate? Maybe you could, that's easier than senescence.
That's much easier. Yeah, that's a single cell that can replicate into different cell lineages and proliferate into different cell structures in the body based on tissue signaling.
That's it. So in your body, you've got about 220 different types of cells, right? And so you got cells for your eyes, cells for your liver, and cells for your skin, cells for your bones. And these cells, remember, there's the Hayflick limit. So they can only replicate so long, but there's a stem cell that's just waiting, like, hey, coach, put me in the game. I'm ready to play. And then, you got to wait for this, all charged up. And it's like, if you're a bone cell, you're going to have to wait longer. But if we can get you to transdifferentiate and you want to go be on the stomach lining, those cells are turning over every 2 days, and we can pay you good. You've got, retirement benefits, sick time off. So, so that's where you get the most action, is in that stomach and small intestine.
If you're a stomach cell, yes, but then I'm assuming you die off a lot faster too, right?
Well, as long as they sign the contract, it's no big deal. We just want cells there. So if we're using the sports analogy, they're like, well, as long as it brings the fans, then we're good. We need some players on the field is essentially what those cells are doing.
Yeah.
So if you have enough stem cells, though, here's the secret. And this is one of the things that's worked so well for our patients is if we can keep enough stem cells in your body, we're going to be pushing out your age, and we're going to be extending it. Your age, not only your chronological age, but we're going to help your biological age hold back. So you're going to stop the aging process better than anything, because as your cells get old, then your stem cells become as old as you are. So that means when they get put in the game, the coach is like, oh crap, this game's not going to end well. all these dudes are like 80 years old, and now they've been sitting on the bench for a long time. Let's see what they can do. And then the DNA just starts buckling with any little stress, and then suddenly you need some TUMs and antacids, and you got proton pump inhibitors. You got loose stools. You're burping all the time, farting. I mean, it's not a good thing. So this is where if you have healthy stem cells, then you actually mitigate a lot of that damage. So this is where some young stem cells are really nice, from umbilical cords and other places. But in the future, this is the medicine of the future. It's so close.
Those are some unreal analogies. Love it.
Yeah, I'm not even charging extra for it today.
You're all weak, folks.
I'm just, yep. All right. So the root cause of aging and its stem cells is when you have these hematopoietic stem cells, and those are the cells that regulate, they become your white blood cells and your immune cells. So the biggest thing that we've learned is when your immune cells start to diminish in their health, that's when your whole body starts to age much quicker. And so it's called immunosenescence. And so that's a big, dangerous thing. And that's why we use like thymosin alpha-1 or ABP7, these peptides, or cordyceps or astragalus, reishi. These are all great ways of keeping your immune cells healthy, because when your immune system is healthy, your stem cells are much healthier. I don't really have a good analogy on that one. I could come up with one, but it just may fall flat, but I could try. It's kind of like when you have the FBI and the CIA and they're all working together and they have high levels of integrity and ethics, then everything in society tends to work well. The police force function well. That's what we want, right? We want a good defense mechanism. We want Navy SEALs who are just like robust. They can handle anything. And that's what happens when your immune cells and stem cells are all communicating properly. Top down. Kate's not really into that one, but
that one,
Kendra loved it. I saw Kendra's face. She was like, "That Regan, that was one of the smartest things you've ever said." Kate was like, gave me a thumbs down. Carly was on the fence.
Yeah. I thought it was a great analogy. I loved it.
See that, Kate?
Can't win them all.
You need them.
Well, we had a couple comments on the stem cell one. Irene said, "My back is phenomenal after her stem cell shots. Nice. I'm so glad, Irene. That is awesome." And then let's see, what else did we get? What's the future stem cell treatment? So thanks for bringing this up, Michelle. Future stem cell treatment since the FDA isn't allowing it anymore.
And this is a great question, Michelle. So what's happening is we're just seeing a massive explosion of people actually and we're working with one of these labs who are actually bringing stem cells to the market. So far, we can still use some of these perinatal tissue products for cushioning and other things, but no conditions have been approved by the FDA for treatment yet. But that is so close. So just hang on. Hold your horses, folks, because it's almost here. So, but yes, there's some great things we can do in the meantime. All right, so the number 9. Can you guys believe we're already in number 9? I know some of you have tears in your eyes because you want me to just keep going. Others of you can't wait because this has been so technical. But I think it's really important because when you go to stem cell exhaustion, the next thing that happens, and this is a big thing, this is when you start to get the altered intercellular communication. And so this is inflammation. This is at the core of all inflammation. And this is when you have the neuroendocrine dysfunction. So your pituitary, your hypothalamus, they quit making some of these pro-healthy and pro-youthful hormones like thyroid hormone. That starts to diminish. Your testosterone, your estrogen starts to diminish. Your progesterone starts to diminish. DHEA goes down. And then you have all these pro-inflammatory hormones. Your insulin levels get dysregulated. You start getting estrogens that are recycled, they're being used again, and that creates inflammation. And then you have cortisol dysfunction, and so that creates a whole host of problems. So this inflammation can be looked at if you look at tumor necrosis factor alpha. The NF kappa beta pathways can be blocked, and then your IL-1 and IL-6 pathways get blocked. And so this alters when you have inflammation. It's kind of like when you have a fire burning. Carly, do you go camping ever? And
sorry, I couldn't get to my unmute button. I kept clicking and it wouldn't go off. Yes, I do go camping quite a bit.
And so you know how satisfying it is when you have a fire and you can hear all the pops?
Yeah, and you feel safe and you feel warm and you don't feel like you're going to get eaten by a bear. Maybe it's just because we go camping in Wyoming a lot near Yellowstone.
Oh,
lots of bears.
Yeah, those are grizzly bears up there, lady.
I know. That's why we like our fires.
Man, well,
Fire may not scare them away either.
Yeah, so Carly, your DNA can be super healthy, but if a bear eats you, the bear is just going to get a better meal. So
I know. That's what my kids tell me. Zombie apocalypse. I'm the first one eaten because I've taken care of myself.
Yeah, the bear's going to look at some other people like, no, fast food, no thanks. Oh, Carly.
Right? Yeah. That's how I feel. They're like, you're going first, Mom. I'm like, thanks, guys.
Right. That's why anytime I go camping, I eat a bunch of junk food before I get out there because I think the wildlife will pass me by. They'll be like, man, what did he eat?
See, s'mores are making more sense now. I understand why you do s'mores when you camp.
Yeah, you can either bring a gun or you can bring s'mores. And I choose to take the nonviolent approach.
Right.
Okay, so anyway, back to the analogy that when your body's on fire, though, so when you're camping, a fire is really nice. And it is. I mean, it's just soothing. It helps you sleep better. There's so many positive things. But when you have fires in your body, it's kind of like if that campfire, if the wind blows and then you hit some dry brush and the next thing you know, the whole mountainside's lit up. That's what inflammation is. Inflammation, is when you get a forest fire. And then it's not easy to put out. If you guys remember the California fires that have happened over the summer, I mean, thousands and thousands of acres just burned and the sky just became really polluted. And I felt in Salt Lake, I would often feel a little bit claustrophobic with all this smoke. Where I go to look at the mountains when you can't see them, and then you go to look, even a block away and it's just covered in smoke. It's not a good feeling, but that's what happens in our body when we have this altered intracellular communication. And then our cells, not only are they not moving, but you can't move the electrolytes in your body. So you lose the charge, your energy levels start to dwindle. And then this is the real cause of brain fog for a lot of people. And it leads to this amyloid plaque buildup in the brain. And then you start getting dementia, Alzheimer's. Your immune system gets confused. It can't sense when there's something dangerous or not dangerous. And that's when you can have, viruses like influenza that can take you out. Pneumonia can take you out. That's why COVID became so dangerous, is because there's so many people who they're on this 9th level of the aging process. And that one little campfire that Carly thought was benign and safe and it's going to keep the bears away, but then it spilled over and lit up the mountainside. That's what causes all the, the age process and inflammation, and that's what makes us pretty darn vulnerable. Everything but bears. So bring s'mores. The best way, if you feel like you do have altered intracellular communication, the studies are really phenomenal about just eating some s'mores. That seems to be we could have that be the
graham cracker, marshmallow, chocolate.
My kids are going to love that. They'll be so excited to find that out.
Man, so I have a confession. S'mores. There's a new resort called the Blue Sky Resort up in Wanship, and there's a restaurant called Utah. My favorite restaurant. I love Utah. It's so good. And outside at the resort, they do s'mores. And so, when sometimes my wife and I have gone there, we took the kids for my birthday last year, and we went and had s'mores because they make their own homemade marshmallows, homemade graham crackers, and then they have these dark chocolate, like 100% dark chocolate with sea salt on it. Holy smokes, it was so good. So anyway, yes, s'mores. I think I lost like 5 years just by eating that s'mores that day. So I should have done my Tillo years before s'mores, after s'mores.
That may have been worth it, though. That sounds amazing.
So worth it. I don't even care if you guys are judging me right now. I'll go to hell with that in my stomach because it was so good.
No judgment. That's why if you got like you're keeping your stem cells fresh. Those guys, you just got like an extra bunch off the bench that were like ready to go.
Exactly.
They just got recycled a lot faster.
Yeah. And I'm always doing peptides and all kinds of things to keep my stem cells as healthy as possible. So yeah, the dudes came off the bench. They were happy to get in the game. They said, wow, Regan just made an error, but luckily we're here. So we carry backup.
Now we get to play.
All right. So let's talk about a couple different things as we kind of finish up. So was that cool? Did you guys like that? The 9 hallmarks of aging? Some interesting research out of Stanford and Harvard. I mean, a lot of scientists have come together and put this together. So pretty interesting. All right. So how do we undo this? Well, there's one genetic pathway. These are the SIR genes or sirtuins. Kate's heard us talk about these at Go Wellness a lot, but these are silent information regulators. So remember, we want the DNA to be silent. And so these SIR enzymes, what they do is they actually help bring in phosphates and methyl groups so you can keep the DNA nice and silenced. And so some of the things that adds to it are these little precursors like NAD. And we have these NAD lozenges that taste so good. You guys have those in Alpine and St. George? The NAD. You can get it if you don't, but NAD is very, very powerful for all things aging. So it turns on these sirtuin pathways. So sirtuins are there to clean up the genes. They trim off things when they get out of hand. They go in and they trim everything that can cause issues with the heart, inflammation. So NAD is one way. You can do NAD infusions, and don't do it fast because it feels like you're going to have your guts ripped out. But otherwise, NAD, if you just do a slow drip, it can be very powerful. So diet and exercise can boost NAD. But there's some great things that we found with NAD. There's also the precursors of NAD. And Dr. Paula Markayanda, our medical director here, she actually is a big fan of using NAD for aging and all the precursors. So NAD. The other thing you can do is one of my favorite peptides called epitalin. Epitalin is your fountain of youth peptide. I mean, it does so many great things, but one of the things we've noticed is the cardiovascular markers, like if your ferritin levels are high, your C-reactive protein, your homocysteine, it brings those markers right down. It helps with cholesterol. But the biggest thing it does is it's a telomerase enzyme. So remember, when you lengthen the telomeres, that delays the aging process. It undoes it. It undoes it, undoes it. It doesn't help with grammar, apparently. But epitalin is a great peptide for that. The other peptide that we love, and we talked about this earlier, is IGF-1. Now, IGF-1 is the genetic, it's kind of the controller for BDNF. So if you want to have really good brain performance, IGF-1 is your way to go. And by the way, we have 3 IGF-1s in Salt Lake. So for those of you who are like, oh, I want to try some IGF-1, actually, I have some in stock. So let me know. I just got it today. So IGF-1, it helps with inflammation. It helps with blood sugar balance, and it also is one of the best ways that you can activate sirtuins, which is your pathway to help clean up the genes. So IGF-1, and then finally, you guys know about MOD-SC, but MOD-SC, it helps with fat loss. It decreases insulin resistance. It's great for energy levels, helps with metabolic stress, diabetes, and it improves health and lifespan. So these are some of the peptides you can use for these 9 hallmarks of aging. So All right, so those are some takeaways. You guys ready for the big challenge, the 60-day fast? I can't believe you guys all committed to doing 60 days fasting. I think that's dangerous, to be honest with you. You guys are being reckless in my mind. So
we got this, guys. Me and my Topo Chico's we're gonna get it done. I got my sparkling water, and we're gonna make this happen.
Hang tight. All right, so maybe not 60 days, but how about we do 1 day of caloric restriction this week? And that's the challenge, is, because we all have this abundance of food, but if you just take 1 day where you eat kind of a light breakfast, light lunch, light dinner, or if you want to go crazy, then maybe you just skip lunch or skip breakfast or skip breakfast and lunch. And let's just do that 1 day out of this week. I try to do this on Sundays where I eat less. I eat a lot less for breakfast, a lot less for lunch, and then I eat a ton for dinner, typically. But just doing this once a week can be a really good way of maximizing your longevity. So Carly, what do you think about that challenge?
I'm going to say I'm already a step ahead. I actually did this today, not because I knew that we were I did know that we were doing it, but every once in a while I do that where I'm just like, you know what, I'm going to have my fat mushroom hot chocolate, and then after that I'm done. So I honestly did not have anything until like 4:30. Well, actually it was like 4:15. I was eating a few scoops of my chocolate almond butter and then got on here. So I actually did this today. So it's doable because I did it today. I skipped breakfast and lunch. So I got the challenge.
Awesome. Well done, Carly. Okay. All right. Well, there you guys have it. So that's your challenge for the week. Really appreciate you guys being part of our hack community. Hope you enjoyed this. And once again, I know it was a lot of information. So check it out on our podcast. This is one of the first hacks we'll ever post on our podcast, but we want to get the word out. So really appreciate you guys. Take care.
Awesome.
Bye.
Same time, same place next week, everybody. Yeah.